things that engineers struggle with, right? And so I'm gonna go through my presentation and tell you more about myself and some things that maybe you can take from here in your next presentations to help you be more successful. So I asked my wife. My wife is a social worker. Okay, so you talk about helping with communications and things like that. She is a social worker, and I asked her. I said, "Well, what's your?" Because I've got to put a plug in here. This is kind of a shameless plug for ADS. I said, "What's your favorite state fair, food on a stick?" And she said, "Well, it's pizza on a stick." And so this is going to be my analogy, and I'm going to show these slides 2 times in this presentation. Once right now and once in the end after I explain to you how to use slides such as this. So I said, "What's your favorite food on a stick?" And she said, "Pizza on a stick." I said, "Okay, so think pizza on a stick, ADS pipe, awesomeness on a stick." Okay? So now you're there. That's all. That's really what I'm going to say about ADS, but I'm going to come back to that. So Oklahoma's my home. I grew up in rural eastern Oklahoma, town of Cromwell. Has anybody heard of Cromwell? And we do have some Cromwell, that know about it. About 300 people. I graduated high school with a class of 26. I hated English. I hated just writing. I did not want to communicate with anybody. I was a typical engineer. I wanted to keep my head down. I wanted to do my work, and that was it. Whenever I would do scholarship applications, I always ask myself, why don't they just ask me to do a math problem? I can just do a math problem. But no, they wanted an essay. They wanted a 300-word essay to explain why I wanted to do what I do. Well, I want to do that because I'm good at what I do. But so Oklahoma's home, and that's kind of, I struggled with coming from a real small rural area into, I actually went to a junior college. I actually went to Seminole State Junior College for 2 years. And before I went to OU, but I really struggled with communication, and that was something that kind of plagued me. And so I did a lot of research, and because I found out when I got into the consulting world, you have to present. You have to get in front of people, and you have to present your ideas to get your point across, to get acceptance. And even though I'm not in the consulting industry anymore, that's still what I do. I do that more than I did. And luckily I was good at it. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to get to the yes. When you get in front of a municipality, when you get in front of ODOT, you're doing your presentation, you're trying to get to that yes point. And so hopefully some of the things that I show you today will help you get to the yes. And just some tips and tricks that I've picked up. So we talk about, so prior to an interview, you're standing out in the hallway, right? Your competing firm's interviewing behind the closed door, and there's going to be that interaction, when they come out. So here's a tip and trick if you're doing the presentation. This is called the winner's pose, or the victory pose. Something that you can do. Scientific studies have shown that if you will do this for 2 minutes, it will raise your adrenaline and cortisol levels prior to a presentation, and which gives you more confidence when you go and present. So just keep that in mind. This is a pose that comes natural to people, even blind people that run races. When they win the race, they'll do this. They've never seen anybody do it before, but they'll do this. If you feel uncomfortable standing in the halls of ODOT doing this, and you wonder what's somebody going to ask me about this, it's shown that if you'll do this, kind of the Superman pose. Superman was my favorite. He was my favorite character when I was small. But it does the same thing. So if you'll stand with confidence, then that helps. If you're a young engineer and you're going into a job interview and you sit in the chair in the waiting room and you're like this, that takes your adrenaline levels and cortisol levels down. It makes you less confident. So if you're sitting there and you wait, it's like the doctor's office, and you get into the doctor's office and you're all nervous, well, that's why. So if you're a young engineer, stand out in the lobby, just wait on your interview for 2 minutes. It helps. you'll get paid more money. So the next thing you do, as soon as you get through the door, you say hi to your competition who's leaving, and you see how well they did, and you hope that your group will do as well. You're going to go in and you're going to meet the people that you're going to be presenting for. This is an equation for the perfect handshake. It is backed by a lot of research that the Americans did not do, thankfully. This was actually funded by Chevrolet, the company Chevrolet, the European branch of Chevrolet. They came up with this equation. So I'm going to talk to you about a handshake. There's a lot of things that go on with a handshake that are subliminal to us that you probably don't even realize. Okay, so everybody turn to the person next to you and start shaking your hand just like you've met for the first time. Start shaking hands.
We have to go outside.
Pump it up and down. Okay, that's right.
Hey, buddy.
Okay, now stop.
Yeah.
Okay, you can stop, guys.
It felt so good.
Okay. So when you shake somebody's hand, and I'm going to shake his hand. Okay, so we're right here. Okay. In the ancient Roman world, the Roman generals after a war would come up and they would grasp hands like this. Okay, and they would actually do this in a squatting position. Okay. Now what they would do is they would push against each other, and whoever would win, he would have what's called the upper hand. You've all heard of the upper hand. He would have the upper hand, and and whoever had the upper hand would be given the first opportunity for basically the booze, the money, and the women. Is what they would be is what they would win by winning the upper hand. Today in our modern culture, we do it down here. Okay. Now when I shake his hand, our hands are aligned. But if you are a person who twists your hand to where my hand's on top, subliminally I'm telling him I'm in charge. Okay. That's all, and it just takes a slight movement. Okay, so shake my hand. Okay, you're going to do what I say. Okay. I need to check the money. It also has to do with the pressure. You want to give back the same pressure that you receive, but you want to be open and honest with your clients, and so you want to grasp their hand head on. Keep it perfectly in line, and pay attention. Now, when you shake somebody's hand, you're going to pay attention. Are they twisting my hand? Which way are they going? To pay attention to that stuff. So, the perfect handshake. So, you're going to have the perfect handshake. That's going to get you off to a great start. The other thing is, when you present, okay, still has the same thing of what's the upper hand, okay? So, when you're in front of the presenter, I've seen a lot of presentations. I've sat through a lot of presentations, and I see so many, even leaders of major firms present like this. Okay, I call it the T-Rex pose, and they really get nervous and their voice cracks and things like that. But right here, this is not for their audience. They don't do this for their audience. They do this for themselves because it puts something in between them and their audience. Okay, so we talk about hand gestures when you present. Vanna White, Wheel of Fortune, she presents like this. Here's your letter. Her hand's always like this. Adolf Hitler was out like this, correct? Would it have been as effective for him if Adolf Hitler was like, yeah, come on, let's follow me? No, it doesn't work that way. Your palms up. If you present with your palms up, studies show that you have an 84% more effective, more acceptance from your audience. Now this is delivering. This was a study that delivered the exact same message 3 different times, but it's how do you want to present your presentation? Okay, you see this. Talk about presidents. Obama. You talk about the Obama hug. He's like, let's come together. Let's have hope. You'll see him do this. It's a palms up type of thing. Bill Clinton, on the other hand, was a pointer. And he would say, I did not have... And so they had to get on to him and say, you can't point because you're directing people. If there was a fire in here, You would want somebody to step forward. Let's say there's a fire exit here and a fire exit here, and say, you guys go here and you guys go here, and we're going to get out of here. And you need somebody to take charge and tell you what to do. But if you are asking for somebody's acceptance, you need to have your palms up. What they ended up doing with Bill Clinton was they had to teach him to put his thumb on his finger, and he still said, I did not accept. That's how it went down. The other thing is, when you go to present to an audience, sell your why, not your what. In professional services, in engineering, we really struggle. It's a hard sell because you're not selling a widget. I sell widgets now. I sell pipe. Okay, I can say, here's my pipe, this is what it does, it's this long, it has all these great features, here it is. In professional services, you can't do that. You can't go, you're selling a team, you're selling an idea, you're selling confidence. And you need to relay to your audience, why do you do what you do? Why are you an engineer? Why did you choose this as a career? Why are you a civil engineer? Because if it was to make money, you wouldn't be a civil engineer. You'd be a chemical engineer or something. I don't know. But you sell your why. Talk about why you do. Why do you want this project? And just tell them. It's easy. It's easy to get off. This is a book that I read, and this is what I'm going to talk about for a little bit. It was written by a couple brothers, and it's called Made to Stick. And it's ideas that you can take and incorporate into your presentation, and you will remember, people that you present to will remember later what you said, and it has to do with just thinking about how do you get an idea across. So just like my initial idea with my pipe, I said, here's awesomeness on a stick and awesomeness in a stick. So Made to Stick. I wanted a great graphic to put up there, and I had a picture. That's why I left when we were downstairs, having some drinks. I left and I came up here and I had to modify my thing because I wanted a great picture that showed a stickiness. I wanted a sticky picture. And Stephen, if you will realize, I am not wearing the same shirt that I did earlier today, correct? It's kind of the same, but it is not the same shirt. I had a picture of a sticky bun, and then I went home and my son, who's 18 months old, was eating a Easter sucker, and he just got all over me with his shirt, and it was blue, and I was sticky. So that was that's my sticky. This is not my son, but I didn't have a picture of his stickiness because I had to give him a bath. The other thing is, make your presentation simple. If you think about it from your audience's perspective, they're going to see a lot of presentations. You want to create a slideshow in your presentations, not a slidegement. I call them slidegments. It's like you've seen them, where it's just bullet point after bullet point after bullet point after bullet point. It's more like a document rather than a slide. You got to keep things simple so people can comprehend things, especially in today's world. We get a lot of information in, all of us, with emails, and how many people read every word in every email? You just I kind of skim and pick up what I need to. And so when you're trying to get a point across, you need to have a simple point. And so simplicity is one of the first steps. The other thing is, do something unexpected. Don't try to be the norm. Think about, you got to think of it think of presentations or communications as a survival skill. So I'm thinking, think about the homeless person that's sitting outside the airport or something. You've all been approached by them. They get your attention. That's the very first step, is they get your attention. They're sitting there and you walk by and they're like, hey, I need some, you got any money for me? They do something to get your attention. And that's what you got to do. You've got to get somebody's attention, because if you don't have their attention, they're not going to remember what you say. They're really not. The other thing is concretedness. And this ties in with simplicity of make what you say mean what you say. Don't be so ambiguous in what you say. Don't make it so big or a message so long that what you're meaning is lost. So be concrete in what you say. If it kind of goes back to my original one, you know, the awesomeness in a stick. I mean, that's 4 words, but it's very concrete, and it opens the doors then for further questions. Credibility. You have to establish your credibility. Your credibility is not how long your firm's been around or anything like that. It's, you know, a lot of times you see, well, we've done this since, you know, 1935, and you establish your credibility. Credibility is like this. Morgan, you and I work together. Presentation-wise, how many projects did I lose when I was at Mac? How many did I lose?
I only know one in Norman.
One in Norman. So I lost one project that I presented on the whole time that I was there. So there's you know, some credibility of I had a higher win rate than most people. You know, most engineers are satisfied with a 33% win rate. You know, I'm like 50-60% of the time. If I got to present, you know, I was going to win the job. The other thing is make it emotional. Well, how do you make a bridge or a roadway or a static structure emotional? How do you make that emotional? How do you make what you're talking about emotional? Well, the thing to think about is to get your audience to relate to is like a past project. What did this bridge in the middle of nowhere mean to the people that lived around them? What was the outcome of replacing that bridge? Or let's say this is your team, and your team has got together and they've done a Habitat for Humanity home, and you know, rebuilt a house together. And you talk about the cohesiveness of your team, and you tie that together and you make it emotional to the point that there's something that you can relate to. In civil infrastructure, it's really hard. It's very difficult to find this emotional characteristic in your projects because they're not. Like I mentioned earlier, my wife is a social worker, okay? I have never had a bridge or a roadway project call me at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, come pick up this 8-year-old kid because their parents are abusing them. That's never happened. But with her, it happened all the time. And we would go out to, this was before we had kids, but 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and we would have to pick up this kid and take them into foster care. And that's stuff that we don't have to deal with, but there are emotional ties to what we do. And you can tell stories. You can tell. Our last one is tell your story. When you're talking about it, tell a story. I heard I was sitting at this table over here, and I heard this guy. He was telling stories. What was your name?
Joe Carter.
Joe. He's a great storyteller. If you just pay attention, just listen to the guy. Everything we talk about is stories. If you don't know how to tell a story, ask your 7-year-old. They know how to tell stories. That's how they communicate. Everything is in a story. People can relate to stories. People remember stories. And, there's been stories that they don't have movies and they don't have presentations, but have been carried on for 2,000 years. A lot of the firms that you work for, they have a story, and talk about your story. Talk about things that you've struggled with, things you've overcome, places that maybe you fell on your face and how you could do better. There's all kinds of different things. So, luckily, the made to stick is the success model, which is be simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, emotional stories, and they couldn't think of another S. So luckily I stole that from somebody else, and it's not mine. So when you think of that, think success. Made to Stick. It's a little bit older book, but it was written by a couple guys named Chip and Dan Heath, and they've got several videos out and stuff where they talk about this made to stick idea. So here's my 2 slides. So you got awesomeness on a stick, awesomeness in a stick. That's what 80 SHP pipe is. That's my shameless plug for the evening. Communication Engineering Challenge. This is how you get a hold of me. I'm on Twitter at kevinw.parker, so if you want to keep track of, I travel between here and Arkansas, so if you want to keep track of where I'm at, what I'm doing, that's how you look me up. Here's my email, my phone number, and I'm right here. So this presentation is brought to you by ADS, and if you have any questions about communications, I'm happy to answer them. No questions. Is that record time?
I don't know, but you're lucky Farouz isn't here because I guarantee he'd have a question. we got no jokes from him, but you picked up his slack.
Well, good. Good.
Actually, those are always comments, not actual.
Well, that's probably true.
Yeah, several comments.
Elias has a question.
Yes, a quick question. So you spoke about the importance of getting beyond the customary monotony of just being so purely technical during presentations.
Yep.
You spoke about telling stories. I was wondering if sometimes a controlled or a joke told in a controlled manner that is not offensive to the audience would be appropriate. And if that were the case, would you have any specific recommendations as to how to put it together?
You always, presentation rule number one is consider your audience. You always have to consider your audience. That's rule number one. And so if you do not know your audience, I wouldn't go there, especially in a professional environment. Then you need to. There is a fine line that you can walk there, but there are ways that you can present technical information in a non-technical way without and still get people to take you seriously. But it is possible. It is a fine line.
I mean, it's true that many engineers struggle to communicate in written form and verbally. For you, what do you think it was that caused you to want to get over that hurdle, or to be able to get over that hurdle that many others don't?
I wanted to make more money. If I can be honest. Now, I knew that was a challenge point for me, and this is all post college research that I've done and looked up, but it was really just saying this is a part of my job that I was not aware of when I was in college, and it's a big part of my job. Whether it's writing proposals, whether it's getting up and presenting in front of people. When I was, when you're out of school 2-3 years, that's when that starts, and you realize that that's a big part of your job. And if you can't win, then you don't work, and so it's more of a way to feed yourself, and so you have to grow into that. I feel like, and that was my thoughts on it. Sir,
Would you think that involvement in other activities besides engineering would broaden your horizons so you can do stories and things that relate to who you're talking to?
definitely yes. A lot of firms I see, I follow a lot of the different firms that are represented here through your websites and different things. A lot of firms do volunteer work as a firm, that they'll come in and they'll volunteer and they'll do something. There are also organizations like the Toastmasters organization that you can get in front of. I went to one meeting and it wasn't for me, but I know that you can get up there and they will count your ums and ands, and I have a bad problem of okay, like you follow, like I need that self-affirmation. So that's one thing that I have to work on, is saying okay in everything. Some people are an person. It's okay to pause. So you just have to work through it. But if you can broaden your horizons, then you have those stories, and especially when you relate it to what you do. Go out on the job site. You talk about you want some stories. Go out on the job site. Talk to those contractors. They'll tell you stories about civil. Now, obviously, in a professional, you can't use the same language that they do, but you can still tell the story. Yes, ma'am.
You talk about shaking hands, and so I'm not sure if you recommend just to go ahead and do the.
Well, do you want to win the job or not? Who you're talking to, or if you're going to shake hands, it really depends. It depends on how do you want to set the stage for the rest of that conversation, and it's subliminal. People won't even realize that if you turn their hand. Now, I have also had. I shook hands with the guy last week, and he was a political guy, and I was working in Arkansas on a state bill that they had there, and we were supporting it, and so I shook hands with this political guy, and he did this pull, he didn't give me his whole hand, he pulled, and it was real hard, and so that made me kind of like, whoa, it made me feel uncomfortable, and he may not even meant anything by it, but it's that subliminal message that you can get. My advice is, just give a moderately firm, a 5 to a 7 on a 10 scale, not too hard, not too soft, but just a nice handshake and set the stage very nicely.
So where does that show up in that equation, the twist that?
I honestly didn't look at the equation. I don't do equations like that in public. Yes, Morgan.
So you talked about really original presentations.
Yes.
Being more personal and outside the box. What is your suggestions on leave behinds and literature that you actually leave? Should that be original outside the box, or should it be straight technical?
You don't have to share this if you don't want to, but I can tell you that the number's probably 90%. How many firms leave the same, your leave behind is the slides of your presentation? I would say it's probably 80, 90%, that's what it is. My thought, this is purely my thought, a presentation should not be able to be interpreted without the presenter. But what you leave behind should be able to. So my slides are mostly visual, and one thing that allows me to do is I'm not just standing here reading bullet points, but it allows me the latitude to go off of something that maybe they said right before that I can talk to, something like that.
So you would still suggest a technical?
Oh yeah, put your points, and you can do this on in PowerPoint, where you have the slide at the top, and then you can have the notes down at the bottom, and you can put all those bullet points in the notes. And so even if you were uncomfortable, you could read. You could have those, but then that could be your thing. I would say, yeah, for them to be different.
Now, as a young engineer, when you go at an ODOT consultant selection interview, typically your audience would be a little older than your own self, and there might be some type of bias based on your background, on your level of experience. So do you have any specific strategies as to how to overcome that gray hair effect, so to speak?
I would say embrace the gray hair that is around you within your firm, or even at ODOT. Because, and here's the thing, here's why I say that. It has not been too many years ago since the generation that was before maybe you and I were hand drafting, being very methodical, putting this stuff on paper, doing it right the first time, where we do it 3 times before we first time around we throw ink on the page and see what sticks. But they were doing it right the first time. There is a lot of value, and that is why, and you're overcoming that gray hair effect, and you're going to have to earn your gray hair. My wife told me I have one somewhere, but you've got it. You have to embrace that, and you have to learn from those guys, because so much of what we do has been around for so long, and a lot of it has been built generation after generation, time after time, of what works and what doesn't. And they're going to be able to guide you through that. Eventually, just be patient, but where you're going to be able to help out is in the modern presentation. You have skills there that they don't, and so there's this cohesiveness or where you can work together with each other to create a great presentation. And even lean on the gray hairs. They may not be as comfortable. I don't know. I wasn't around. I don't know how consultant selection used to happen 30 years ago. I don't know if it was any different than it is now, but they do. They've been through that, and sometimes competition's not going away. You've got to get somebody's attention, and so working together. But I would say definitely embrace them, what they can do. Yes, sir.
When you just talked about Elias's question, it reminded me of when I was a really young engineer trying to sell something to the head of a corporation that was big. And my boss, who was not a lot older than I was, started out his presentation. He said, "Well, Bill, and then he got interrupted immediately by that vice president or the president of that corporation. "Young man, don't call me by my first name. I don't know you.
Right.
You call me Mr. whatever.
Mhm.
Well, when you said that, you can only learn that from the gray hairs.
Right.
And and maybe it might be a good idea to make your presentation a dry run to people in your own firm that are of that age, if you know
Yeah.
the type of person you're talking to.
That's a very